video for you, but not making floats or anything like that. Today we're going to try and make a wormery or a worm farm. So this is going to be based on I've had a look on some videos on YouTube, and I've kind of adapted what I've seen to make a small size worm farm that's just going to be suitable to keep in the garage here and hopefully keep me going with a few worms through winter. So what I'll do is talk you through what we're going to need for this make, and we'll take it from there. Right, guys, so really simply, what a worm farm, all it really is a pot to keep worms in that they can't escape, they're not going to die, and you can put some food in and keep them alive. What I'm going to be using are these 7-litre bins. Excuse the purple colour. I got them on eBay. If you picked your colour, they were £7, free delivery, and if you let them pick the colour, they were £6. So I thought, well, I'll save £1 and see what they send me, and I got purple ones, so I'm sure the worms won't mind. So that's obviously the first thing you're going to need, is somewhere for the worms to live. I'm going to use a double container system, and I'll show you that as I go along. I'm going to use some glue, so I've just got a hot glue gun there. That's like some mesh-like material to stop the worms escaping from the through the drainage holes that I'm going to put in, something to make the drainage holes, and something for the worms to live in. And in this case, it's like compost, but this is for pet spiders. I'm going to mix this with a bit of topsoil out of the garden. I'm just using this because I don't want to use like the potting compost, because that has chemicals and stuff in it, not chemicals but like fertilizer and that, and I don't know if the worms will like that, and I don't want it kind of stimulating the growth of any of the peelings and stuff that are eventually going to go in there to feed the worms. So that's what I'm using. It's safe for spiders, which are a bug. Worms are a kind of bug, so I'm going to go with that. That's probably a suitable substrate for them to live in, and if I mix it with a bit of topsoil from what they're used to, then that should be fine. I'm not going to buy worms to stock this. I'm actually going to try and find them myself, and it's been really cold and it snowed this morning, so it might be a bit of fun, but I'll get out with the GoPro on and see if we can get a few worms a bit later on. Right, first things first, we're going to make the pot that the worms are actually going to live in. So this is the one that's going to have all the holes in it. I'm going to drill some holes in the lid and some holes in the bottom for drainage, and that will eventually, once that's done, it will sit inside this one. And I'm going to get rid of the lid. You'll only need one lid for this particular type of worm farm. Right, I'm going to drill some holes in the bottom of this. It's nice and round. This is going to have lots of holes in it because we want this to really drain really well. And I'm using about, I think it's about a 5mm drill bit. You could use bigger or smaller. Obviously, the bigger the holes, the fewer you need, because you get more water through. I'm using a relatively small one just in case the worms can get out of the mesh I'm going to put on the bottom of the inside. Then it might just prevent a few of the bigger ones getting out, although hopefully they won't get further than the other pot anyway. We've had our first error or cock up. I cracked when I was drilling it, I cracked the bottom of the bucket. So I've used the hot glue gun, and it's actually seemed to have affected a reasonable repair. It's just got to stop excess water draining out and the worms escaping. So I think that should be fine still. Right, there's the holes drilled. Plenty of drainage there. I've put a couple around the edge as well, just on the where it sort of dips down around the edge, because that will obviously be quite a place where water will accumulate, so I don't want it to ever really be sort of sodden and wet in there, because the worms only really like it damp, I think. Right, so that's the mesh there. I want to stick that on the inside, just glue that all the way around so it seals it, so the worms can't escape out the holes basically. A handy way to get the right size, I've cut a small square, and I mean you could just draw around the bottom of the bucket like that, but what I want to do is you fold it into halves, quarters, eighths, and fold it again so you get like a triangle there. And if you put the center of the triangle in the middle of the bucket and then just cut to the edge, that should give you, I think it's 8, so it'll give you like an octagon, or I don't know what the shape is with all those sides, but yeah, near enough circle. And if you cut it slightly rounded, you should get a reasonable circle, and then just glue it round on the inside. There you go, a reasonable circle shape there. So I'll get that glued in now. Right, there you go. You can see there that I've glued the gauze in, or the mesh, or whatever you want to call it, which should stop the worms escaping. I've put some holes in the lid, some air holes, and so we're now ready to start stocking it. I mean, that has taken, you know, 15-20 minutes to make all told, so it's great, really. I mean, and fingers crossed this will keep producing worms right through the winter if I keep it in the garage where it's not going to freeze. And just to aid in the drainage, I've got some old aquarium gravel there. It's just going to help sort of prevent the holes clogging if the worms sort of start chewing through the soil, sort of making it go sort of more fine and silty. And it'll also help just to keep that gauze down and hopefully prevent the worms from getting out the holes at the bottom. Put a bit of this in. I'm just going to put quite a tall bucket, so it doesn't need that much. I don't want to build it up too high so the worms can climb out the side. So there's probably about 1.5 inches of the spider soil, or if you're using your compost or whatever, in there. And I don't want to go up more than halfway. So what I'm going to do now is go into the garden and see if I can find some topsoil and worms. Just before I go out and get the worms, just want to say about putting in the second bucket. Obviously, the whole reason for that is to keep the keep the moisture in, keep the drainage, stop the worms escaping, or gives them a sort of another place to fall into if they do try and get out. And also the juice that comes out the bottom of the worms, they call it worm tea, and you can keep that and use it on the garden or to pour into houseplants to give them some nutrients. So that's kind of the idea behind that, and it just makes it all one compact, complete unit rather than having to stand it in a tray of water or anything like that. So that was really the idea of using the 2 containers. Obviously, if you don't put drainage holes in it, you can use 1 container. You just got to be a bit more careful in monitoring the water levels and stuff like that. Bloody hell. Did you see that, guys? There are loads of dendros in here. Wow. This is amazing. This is all the old grass shavings, grass cut clippings. Well, I think that's probably going to do to be going on with, to be honest. I want to see how we get on. So I'm probably not going to use them for quite a while because I don't think I'm going to be out fishing that much. What with having to stay local. So what I might do is just take some of this kind of, that sort of they've matted into a bit of a matting, and put some of that in. I think I'll just use that as a bit of substrate into the actual worm farm, because there's quite a lot of small ones in there, so there might actually be eggs in there as well. So this might actually make a really good colony, and at least I know if something goes wrong or I use them up, there's loads more in this composter. I had no idea they'd be in here. In the summer they're all on the lid. Just take the lid off and just scrape them off, but I didn't realise in the winter they'd be on here. Take a small piece of that. Well, as you would have seen from the GoPro footage, there were loads of worms in the compost and loads of tiny weeny ones in this like layer of grass cuttings as well. So I'm just going to whack all that in, and I'm sure they can eat through the grass cuttings, and we'll see how it goes. So I've just moistened the substrate in there. So let's just get the worms in and see how we get on with them. Well, that's it, done and dusted. They're in, as you've seen me dumping them in already. I've just thrown in some carrot peelings and potato peelings, literally just a handful, which is that, I mean, there's only really a handful of worms gone in there, so that's probably too much, it is. But it's not very warm out here, so I don't think they're going to sort of go bad and poisonous or anything. So what I'm going to do is come back in a few days and see if they've done anything, see if it's sort of changed the way it looks. So I'll take a picture of this now and then take a picture of it in sort of towards the middle of the week, because I want to put this video out on Sunday. So it'll give me a few days to get it edited and uploaded. There is one of the worms there tracking along, but it's probably warmer in the garage than it is in the garden, so it might sort of stimulate their metabolism and they'll get going. And yeah, it'd be a nice little experiment to see how they get on, see what they eat, see how quick they grow, see if we can farm them. I know there's a guy on the on one of my Facebook groups, Matt, who made one recently, and he's getting loads and loads of eggs out of it. So I know my mum's partner keeps tropical fish, and I suspect they'll probably quite like eating worms' eggs as well. So if we get too many of those, anyway, hopefully that's been helpful and useful, and you've enjoyed it. Give it a go and let me know how you get on, or if you've got any worm farming tips or tricks or anything like that, comment below. That'd be great. Right, guys, hopefully you can see that this is now about 5 days later. You can see there's not much of a change, but I don't know if you can see that sort of bit of carrot there, right there in that sort of V shape between those ones. That's actually been pulled under into the substrate by the worms. Get more light in there. There's no real visibility, but as I said, there's only a handful of worms, and that is quite a lot of food because it's quite cold out here. It stayed fresh. It's not sort of breaking down and rotting. Since I made this, I've actually because I watch a few videos on YouTube about wormeries, and they were by fishing channels, and so I had recommendations for other worm farm videos, because that's what YouTube algorithms do. And I watched a few, and they were from gardening channels, and what they use is a three bucket system, and I've actually seen a couple of fishing channels that use it as well. And that's where, so instead of having the mesh at the bottom of this bucket, you have a sort of a grid that allows the worm castings to fall through into the middle bucket, and then the bottom bucket collects the water. And that middle bucket, then you can take those castings out and use them for compost, if that's what you want to do. Now, I think because this is a very small one, you suggest that I might not be getting the volume of worm castings through anyway, because it's not going to be chocker. The ones I saw were pretty big, sort of big recycling bins or huge dustbins, that you'd use to put your household rubbish out. And so that's just worth bearing in mind. But I think, as it goes, and from the stuff I've seen, this should be adequate to keep worms alive, breed them, and bring on small worms for use as bait. But if you want to sort of make a bigger version of it, then you might want to consider using a 3 bucket system, and I think that'll be something I'll definitely be looking into, maybe as we get into the back end of summer later this year. So hopefully that's been useful for you. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers, guys. Fish on.